Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about the topic of promises in JavaScript. Before getting into the syntax part of promises, let's try to understand what promises are. So promises in JavaScript are very much similar to the promises that we make in real life. So suppose if you promise someone to do some work, you can either complete that work successfully or you can fail to complete that work. In JavaScript, similarly, we have promises which can either resolve or get rejected. So now let's create a promise and see. A promise accepts a function which takes two parameters, resolve and reject. So let's take an example of where a equal to 1. Now I want this promise to get resolved if a is 1. So I would write if a equal to 1, resolve this promise, and I will send a message success if it's get resolved. And if it's failed, if the promise failed, I want it simply to reject and send the message failed. Now in this promise, what this promise basically does, if a is equal to 1, then it resolves the promise and it's a successful promise, or if a is not equal to 1, then it simply rejects the promise and it fails. To run this, we simply have to do is p dot then, and as we have only passed one parameter, we will take a message and let's say we will console it out. So console.log message. And similarly, to catch this reject, I have to add catch message, and here also I will just console.log this message. Now let's run this and see what happens. As you can see, we are getting the message success. As a is equal to 1, we are the promise is getting resolved, and the message is success is returning and it's getting printed. Now if I change it a equal to 2, let's see, this promise is failing. So so basically what happens if a is not equal to 2, and it goes to the else block, and the reject passes the message failed onto the catch, and the catch prints the message, simply console logs the message failed. Now this promises come in handy, very much handy in cases where there is a long wait for something. Suppose you are trying to fetch some data from the backend, and you don't want to wait for the data to completely get fetched, and you want to work on something else, and when the data gets completely fetched, you want to use that data somewhere. So you can simply if the data successfully gets fetched, you can console it out, or you can show the user result accordingly, or if it fails, you can put in catch if you want to show any error message to the user, or try to refetch the data again. So to understand this promises more better, we have to look into callbacks, and now let's look into a callback and how it's better to use promises. I have taken a callback function here. So as you can see, I have taken a variable I am eating, and I have taken a function eating callback, and I have passed two functions, callback and error callback, and I'm checking if I am eating is true, then the callback would pass I am eating, and if it's false, then else it will put in the error callback, and it will console log I am hungry. And in eating callback, I am simply passing two functions. The first function console logs success with the message that I'm passing into it, and the other one console logs error with the message that I'm passing into it. Now let's test it and see what the result we get. So as you can see, error I am hungry, as I am eating is false, so that would mean that the error callback is getting called, and it simply putting in the I am hungry message. And if I change it to true, then it will put in success and I am eating. Now to change this thing to this callback to simply to promises, I simply have to, let's take this, okay, and paste it here, and let's rename this to eating. So I have to simply put it as promise, eating promise, and let's empty this out, and this should simply return new promise, and as you've seen, it should have a resolve and a reject, and we will simply put this if and else into this return, and wherever we have called the callback, we will put it as resolve, and wherever if you have put an error callback, we will put reject. And let's change it, and this function call will simply change it as eating callback to eating promise dot then message and dot catch. It should put another message. Okay, I'm getting an error, excuse me. Okay, and dot catch, it should get the message, and console.log field with the message. Okay. Oh, okay, wait, it was error the message. Okay, now wait, let me just comment this out, and let's see. Excuse me. Eating promise. Okay, so this is the final function that we get. So I'm calling the eating promise function, and as it is returning promise, then it's dot then, and I'm simply just doing the same thing again. I'm console logging this success message for dot then, and for dot catch I'm just putting the error message in, and if I check it again, I'm simply get success I'm eating, and if I change I'm eating to false, I will get. So this is how to simplify this callback into a promise. Now let's take a look into some of the functions that there is inbuilt into promise. So suppose I have taken this three promises, P1, P2 and P3, and I have just put resolve in all three of those, and I collectively want to get the final result of all this promise when all these three promises are getting resolved. So I will simply write is promise dot all, and I will pass this promises P1, P2 and P3 as array, and dot then, as there is I don't have to mention any, as there are multiple promise P1, P2 and P3, multiple promises. I will get an array of messages of whatever message is getting resolved. So I will simply console.log this, and let's see, I should get an, as you can see, P1, P2, P3, I'm getting an array of messages. So let me change this message from P1, message from P2, and message from P3. So if I do this, I'm getting message from P1, message from P2 and message from P3. Now if I change one of this resolve to a reject, then I should only get the message as soon as there is a reject is encountered into a promise. I should get that message. So see, I am getting an error of unhandled message from P2, as I have not added any catch block. So if I add a catch block to this, and I have put messages, and I console.log log this messages, I should successfully get the only message which is rejected. So if there is a single reject and this 3, it is getting printed, and if I change another one to reject, it would only return the one that it gets encountered first. So suppose it encounters message from P2 first, error message, then it would only print message from P2, and it will not go into this third promise and would not cover this promise.